All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Rivera, and you are tuned into another episode of the Live Discussions with Diamond podcast. And this right here is episode 130. But before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Through Buckshot the Radio, where you can listen to this interview in high quality. As well, this podcast is available on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, and other streaming platforms. And also, before we get started, letting you know that I need you to be coming to the Dallas Bachata Festival this October 14th through the 17th. We're going to have theme parties. We're going to have performances, workshops, and so much more. Can't wait to see you there. And today, people, we have a very, very, very special guest, a woman that I admired for so many years. Her resume, her dance catalog goes back over a decade plus. And I am really, truly thankful to have her on the platform today. And we have all the way now in Jersey, the one and only Isabel Freiberger.
Hey y'all.
Hello, Isabel. Honestly, it is amazing that I can have you on this podcast today.
Yeah, I feel really honored that you have chosen to speak with me today, and I'm really excited.
Absolutely. I mean, as we've talked as well privately, for me, really admiring your career for over a decade plus, really seeing kind of where you started, which we'll get into, of course, but also realizing how far you've come and seeing where you are now currently. It's really amazing to see because, as we know, there are hundreds upon hundreds of artists that we've seen throughout the world, throughout the states. So it's hard, really, for artists to differentiate themselves, to really have that individuality. There's so many artists that are so well versed, but for me, having an artist like you on is truly important because that representation of, for me, a strong woman, a woman who really carries her own, who at one point, of course, had Issa Dance Company, which I absolutely adored. One of my favorite companies I've seen to date. But, having you on as well, because I love to have the artists tell their stories, because for so long, many artists have stories, but someone else is telling it for them. So having this type of platform where it's a safe space that I consider it's really important to have you on, especially.
Yeah, I think it's really great what you're doing, and giving voice to artists. It's really great.
And, of course, before we get started, the question I always ask every guest, and I love understanding, is the big question: how have you been?
Oof.
I would say that's a loaded question, but
it is. I've been good. I literally just moved about a week ago to Jersey. I was about to say back to New York. I lived in New York for seven years.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, went home, be with family unexpectedly, and now I'm back. I'm in Jersey and excited to take on the city again.
I mean,
but it's been a lot.
I'll tell you this past year has been a lot for all of us, especially in the community. I mean, not knowing when we're going to have a dance event again, not knowing when we're going to be able to teach classes, not even really knowing when we're going to see some of our close friends again. I mean, it's for many of us, it's been well over a year that we've been to any type of dance event, even though, of course, things are now getting back to some type of normal. I think for me, in my opinion, I think it's still going to take some time, but I'm glad to see the transition of where we were prior, like last June till now. I mean, just seeing how the states are picking back up, how people's motivation is picking up. But most of all, seeing artists like you still here means a lot because, like I've told you before, understanding there are many artists that kind of have moved on from this community because, it's not really, quote unquote, paying the bills. It's not a love anymore. And they've had to find a new avenue. And, for me, also, like we've talked as well, I love asking that question because for so long in our community, we had people tell us, great show, amazing show, love that. But a lot of times people don't even ask that simple question of how are you?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it's interesting because I've come to realize the very shows I performed with, the very collaborations or companies I performed with, many of the people I considered, and this is my personal opinion, the people that I've considered friends, they weren't. They were, for me,
Yeah.
they were more acquaintances. Not even that. They were just people that admired me for 2, 3 minutes of what I've done on a stage, and they loved this performance. They may even give me a critique here and there. But we know how New York can be. But at the same accord, having that genuineness that I love giving to artists of letting you know that even though we're gonna celebrate your success on the stage, I think the success off the stage is even more important, because I think what you can do off the stage definitely correlates what you do on stage. I mean, everything from the costumes, from the preparations, everything really entails.
It all goes together.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as I always start with every one of my guests, of course, we're going to talk about all the amazing performances, experiences, and congresses. But I think it's even more important understanding how it all started.
Yeah.
So, as I ask everyone, and I will ask you, Isabel, who is Isabel before dance?
Yeah. I grew up in North Carolina, and for me, that will always be home. And so, I always bring it back to there. That's where I started dancing. But I don't know, I was kind of a weirdo. I've always been a little bit of a weirdo in high school. I've always been interested in a lot of different things. I've been an artist my whole life, usually starting with more like a visual art, painting, drawing, photography. And I've always been an athlete. So I think kind of always having those two sides and two seemingly separate interests came together really nicely when I started dancing. But yeah, just a Carolina girl trying to create. It's kind of always been me.
And it's interesting that you said that, because, with North Carolina, for me, being in the scene since about 97, I've seen so many groups, and I think people have to understand there is more dancing than just in New York and LA. I think people have to really.
And Italy.
Thank you. New York, LA, Italy, and I'll even say Spain. Hey, there's a lot more than just those 4 places, and especially North Carolina. For me, understanding the Cobo brothers. I mean, for me, those are one of my favorite duos of all time. We're going back even to like mid 2000s. That's how far I
That's
go.
when I started.
And it's also interesting that you said kind of that weirdo aspect. And I think what happens, and I've talked to many guests as well, they've had that same notion that maybe in high school or in school in general, when we're doing something that's kind of out of the status quo that everybody else is doing, when we're kind of, instead of going left, we're going right. I think that term weirdo gets put around because people, again, are fear of the unknown. If they don't know what you're doing, or they're doing it personally themselves, is kind of foreign to me. So a question I have really is, where did you kind of get that artistry from? Like you said, that weirdo aspect, or was it kind of something that cultivated, or through family, or was it like that?
Yeah, I think my family has definitely been a huge part of who I am, because they've always, encouraged me to be who I am and to find that, to this day. And I think that who we are changes, we transform. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And so my parents, my family, my sisters, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, like they've always, overall, I've always had a lot of encouragement to just, be me. And so I was able to go through my different phases throughout high school, and and I'm glad I was able to do that with no judgment from home. And my dad is a musician. He's a physician and a musician. So there's always been like this, kind of like, okay, but find a professional career, but explore your art, but find a professional career, but explore your art. And so, you know, I was always encouraged to do well in school and try everything, right? Try the sports, try the art classes, try, you know, whatever it is that you want to do, theater. I didn't do that in high school. My other sister did, but we were always encouraged to find what was ours, what felt right. And so I'm really grateful for that experience. And my parents, you know, there's no way I would be here without the support of my parents. Like, there's just no way. There's no way.
And it's really interesting that you even brought that up about with your dad being a physician and a musician, being kind of that secure job in a sense, but on the other hand, having a passion and a love. But what's interesting is that I've talked to many artists, and I find it really revealing is when it comes to the parents, you have two different sets. The ones that go for your dreams fully, it's all good, be who you want to be. Then you also have the flip side of, is this going to be financially backing? Is this going to be your financial backing? Are you going to be able to live off this? Is this something a long-term, or is this the quote unquote hobby? Is that many artists artists have told me that when it comes to their parents, that, you know, you want your parent to accept who you are, believe in what you believe, and motivate you. But sometimes it can be, there's a juggle, I think, on that. When you were growing up, and also we talked about, many people wouldn't know that, you know, you are Spaniard, that you have, you know, you're Spaniard. So with you, of course, being Spaniard, was there really like a Latino community or a Spaniard community really in North Carolina?
Yeah, there's a real, well, not really Spanish, but there's a big Latino community in North Carolina, mostly Mexican and Central American. A lot of agriculture workers, a lot of immigration in North Carolina. So there's a really like flourishing Latino community, and it's growing every day. You know, I'm sure the demographics have changed since years ago, but it's definitely really present.
So my question now is, when or how did really dance kind of come into your life? Was it kind of just that class you kind of got sucked into, or was it something that you really researched through?
A little bit of both. It was, I mean, I always loved the music. In high school is when I started listening to salsa, bachata, merengue, a little bit of everything. You know, I grew up listening to flamenco and then like American music and whatever, a little bit of everything. I've always listened to a little bit of everything. I've always had pretty diverse musical taste. But my aunt from Spain, she raised me until I was like, well, until she went back to Spain. But because my birth mother died when I was born, she was the Spanish side. And so her sister stayed and helped my dad raise me and my sister, which is why I speak Spanish fluently. It was actually my first language. And so we always had Spanish in the house. We always had flamenco music, and most of her friends were Latino. And so she started bringing in Latin music into the house. And so I've always loved the music, and that was it. Like that's what got me hooked. But like I said, in high school, I was an athlete. And so none of my friends thought dancing was cool, but I always was like, I don't know. It's like, what is this? Like, moving my body. I don't know. Like, I already do move my body, but it's, you know. And so I always had this like intrigue towards how to move to the music that I was starting to really enjoy listening to. And so I found this one restaurant. I forgot what it was called, but it was in my hometown in Chapel Hill. And they had these Latin nights, and I would always try and get my friends to go, but they wouldn't. And so I never could until college. So I went to college 20 minutes away from my hometown. I went to Duke University.
Okay. I was about to ask you too. It was were you NC State, or you North Carolina Tar Heels, or Duke University?
Oh, you know your university.
Come on. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a big Tar Heel fan.
Listen, okay, I'm not allowed to say it, but my stepmom, I don't like to call her my stepmom because she raised me from young as well. But she was a Tar Heel cheerleader, so it was a house divided. My dad worked at Duke, my mom worked at UNC. It was a house divided. So I'm not allowed to say I'm a Duke fan. My mom would kill me. But then, like, you know, I had friends on the team, and you know, it was exciting to be at Duke for, you know, watching basketball and stuff. But I don't know. I don't keep up with it anymore.
Yeah.
My mom's gonna kill me with that too. But yeah, UNC is amazing. UNC is amazing. But I ended up going to Duke. That kind of falls in line with the, okay, but let's be professional.
Yeah.
And so there was always this expectation that, you know, I would follow, you know, those dreams. I was always interested in science and biology. But I promptly started failing classes. So we changed the major.
I appreciate the honesty, because, hey, people don't understand. Biology is not the same in high school than it is in college.
Ooh, you know, the biology class was always fine. It was the calculus and the chemistry that was a problem for me.
Because it's always the math. Everybody loves science, and so you got to add some things together, and then it gets a whole nother level.
Can't we just talk about like cells and shit? I don't want
to. Thank you. Honestly, I don't know where I'm doing Pythagorean theorem in real life.
No, I'm not. I'm sure someone is. Like, if you're making bridges, please, dear God. But
thank you.
You know, I'm not interested in that. So, so anyway, Duke was a really interesting experience for me. I don't think it was really the right fit of a university for me, but I'm really glad I went there, because that's when I discovered dance. So, you know, you go to school and you're like, oh, I get to reinvent myself. And so right away, I met my best friend at the time, and we were both really interested in learning how to dance. And so we just started going to clubs. And we just started dancing. We just started social dancing, not knowing what the hell we were doing. And, you know, it's like two young girls who are very interested, and you know, people noticed, and because we were going out like every night, so people. And in North Carolina, if you're going out every night, you see the same people. Like it's a small community. It's grown. It's definitely grown, but at that time, you know, you get to know people really quickly in the dance community there, and so you know, people noticed, and so we got invited to classes, and after a few months, we started taking classes with Kobo. And really quickly after, we joined the team and started training with them. At that time, they were looking to bring dancers up to start traveling with them, because they had a need. Kobo brothers started off just traveling together, the two brothers.
Yes, I remember.
And so, but they were trying to evolve their company a little bit more, and they had already started doing that, but they were lacking in consistent dancers. And so, they had this like little mini audition. First audition, I was like, "What the hell is this?" But let's go. And I became Milton's partner. And then it was salsa boot camp from there.
Man. hey, I mean, from my experience as I was younger, especially in the early and mid 2000s, seeing the Kobo brothers, especially from North Carolina, I was really excited even as a young kid, because there was more than just New York. There was more than LA. There was more than just the surrounding tri-state area around me. I saw, you know, the South, or, you know, downstate really kind of getting that representation. And I loved it because it was something refreshing. But I think even more refreshing was, like you said, the Kobo brothers, of these two brothers actually traveling and performing as a duo. And something I always respected about both of them is the energy level. There wasn't one lacking and one hype. They were always on the same page. And especially seeing two males, which was a lot of times in our scene, which was oversaturated with just couples. There was always couples or always companies, but you know, you didn't get a lot of duos. But what I really appreciated, what you just said, was these two brothers realizing that, you know, they're doing great by themselves, but actually impacting the community and bringing up dancers. That's really what, you know, a teacher, an instructor, and a director really is, because, you know, nothing's better than having your community back you, but also bringing the people up from your community. And like you said, that's a big thing that lacks within, and people don't realize it's not just easy of having a dance studio, performing places, and people are ultimately just going to gravitate. I mean, people have lives outside of this, And it's hard to have a dance schedule with a real life work schedule, and things get crazy. So a question I have is, like you said, the salsa boot camp, and that's really where it started. How were those initial moments like of, this is kind of a different world now for you. This isn't just going to clubs every night and parties. This is now training.
Oh, I was still going to the clubs every night. That was part of my training. I started off as a social dancer. I did my first almost year, truly focusing on social dancing, because that's, that's why I fell in love with it. Yeah, I mean, it was really great. Again, I was an athlete. And so I was used to that kind of drill sergeant, really intense training. I'm not saying I'm advocating for that. To be clear. I'm not saying that I think that that's the best way to go about it. Were there results? Yeah, absolutely. Were there, side effects, consequences? Absolutely. We can get into that. I'm sure it's going to come in the conversation later, but I do believe that that the way you do things matters. You know, it's not just about the end result, and I think that we need to remind ourselves of that every day. Because having goals and dreams is beautiful, but how you impact people, how you impact your community is even more important, in my opinion. And so, I mean, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for how I immersed myself in dance, because I truly fell in love with it. I truly fell in love with it, and it has totally changed my life. I'm dancing. I am not a biologist, so it's like.
Hey, but you create a formula on that dance floor. I can't lie on that. I mean, one thing I can say of seeing you for years is the topic I would say is reinvention. You've been able to reinvent yourself over the years. We're going back.
All right, I'll take it.
I've seen you 2010 in Japan with the Kobo brothers when social dancing, styling, and profiling, and seeing you even in the last few years and before COVID, what I appreciate is not just that you can dance even with a couple, dance with a team, but also dance solo.
Yeah,
that right there is a whole different beast, because I think a lot of artists don't understand. It's easy to be with a team and everybody's kind of grouped as a team and judged as a team and critiqued and loved. But when you're there by yourself, you're the only one that can go from start to finish.
There is nothing scarier than dancing on stage by yourself. There's nothing more difficult.
You make it look great, and
it's pretty empowering.
Yes. Wait, the question I do have, and let's go back, is what sports did you do in high school?
I was most focused on lacrosse. That was my jam. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought you were about to go to Duke but I didn't think they had.
I wasn't that good. I was good, but not Duke good.
I mean, because Duke has one of the greatest lacrosse programs, So, I mean, I wish, did they even have a female lacrosse team?
Yeah, absolutely. Their female lacrosse team is great. I actually played on the club team for a little bit, but
all right.
But then I started dancing, and I was like, I've done that. I'm done.
And
I didn't have time for that.
And that's something I've talked to a lot of people about, is they had loves or things they were passionate about before dance, but kind of dance came and just kind of took all over. And also, too, I forgot to tell you, during this interview, we'll be having live comments coming in from Miss Carmen Gwynn, all the way from St. Louis, Missouri.
I miss you.
Absolutely. And also here, we have a comment from one of my good friends all the way from the DC area, Mr. Carlos Siwas from Media Rebel, saying here, she's one of the only few salsetas that took me out on the dance floor and make me dance, even though I wasn't that good on two. She was so nice and welcoming, probably one of my best dancers out there, just jamming with some flow and basics. Thankful for instructors like her. And that's something that you kind of briefly touched on, and we'll get into that more, was you social dancing. You just really bring out there. And I think that helps so much, because a lot of people don't understand, you really learn. Of course, you're going to learn training, but you learn so much more social dancing. You learn about weight transfers. You learn about positioning. You understand the people around you and how they operate, because it's easy to train with one person and you're with that one person, but once you're kind of put out to the world, you're kind of at the world's mercy. And not everyone, and I tell many follows this, not every lead is the same.
Not every follow is the same.
Exactly. And that's the one thing people have to understand, that I've had these discussions with leads and follows, and I tell them, please social dance, because do not just dance with the same person on your team from start to finish, because you're never really going to grow as a dancer.
I understand the vulnerability that it takes to go outside of the people that you know.
Yes.
Especially if you're more of a beginner, or if it's scary. It's scary out there. And I remember how scary it was, but I also remember that like desire and drive to just, man, like I just want to move to this music. I don't really know how yet. I'm learning how, and I'm, grateful to the people that took me out to dance when I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I get to have to acknowledge my privilege of like being, was like young, white, and cute, and that, I'm sure helped me get some dances when I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the people that choose to still dance with me to this day. And so, who the hell am I to not know someone who's asking me to dance and say no, unless I have a real reason to say no. Because consent is also important, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Consent,
I need to always have the option to say no, but I'm not going to. I love dancing. I love social dancing, and I love me a basic. That is like my entire teaching method is based on the basic and elevating your basic, because if you don't enjoy doing your basic for a whole song, what do you enjoy doing? It all comes from there.
Hey, I mean, one of the shirts I love and I've seen, I think it was by Carlos Cinta, and it said "basic the shit out of me," and I was like,
hell yeah!
Wow. I mean, it says so much, but it's such in a small terminology, and it's like, honestly, I tell a lot of people, for me, dancing many years, even instructing at certain points, for me, I tell people you have to understand the fundamentals before you can take it to the next level. Because one thing I've noticed, especially in New York, one thing we are is extremely harsh and extremely judgmental. And people love, don't get me wrong, they love the tricks and they love the turn patterns. But if you can't even get the timing and the fundamentals right, you're really going to have to work. Because I tell people too, performing is not easy. It's not just picking up a costume. If you want me to really go deep, it's not about picking up a costume in 149 and 3rd Avenue where everybody, yes, and going to your show, taking a few training classes, think you got the show, and it just happens. It really takes time. And that actually leads me to my next question is, how long was it from that training point with the Kobo brothers till you actually had your first performance?
It was really fast, a lot faster than it should have been. Like I said, they had a need. They had jobs. They had gigs. They had one. Already had another female dancer at the time, and so there was already a choreography. I learned it really fast. I wish I could give you dates. I don't remember the date of my first performance, but I loved it. After my first performance, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is it. I found it. I found what I love to do. I loved it because it was terrifying. And I'm kind of a masochist, and I like to do scary shit because it's rewarding to me to accomplish things that are really hard for me to do. I'm naturally pretty shy, and I'm definitely an introvert. And so to put myself out there right in that way felt really exhilarating and terrifying. And so, I got hooked. But it was probably a little too. I don't think I was ready for that first show.
Hey, I mean, you got to get.
My first Congress that I performed at was in DC.
Oh, okay.
And there's a video. It was not cute, but it's there.
Wait, was this was it Shine's footwork?
No, it was with Kobo. It was it's like a burgundy and gold routine. El Conguero.
Well, I'll definitely look that up and I'll be
I don't
sharing.
know why I had to share all of that so that you guys can go see that.
Oh my God. Hey,
I
mean,
had nothing to hide.
we all got to start somewhere. And, again, what I appreciate is your humility, but also you having that vulnerability of saying, yes, I am a masochist. I am an introvert. There are things that, and when you said you love to kind of push that limit of not being afraid and doing things, it hit me because seeing some of your routines, and we'll get into that especially more, but seeing the routines you've done over the years and the tricks you've done. And I'm like, yeah.
That's where the real masochism comes in, because I have a very strong love-hate relationship with acrobatics because I am not a gymnast and I am terrified of heights and I am terrified of falling, and it is a process.
Let's just say I've been there with some of your rehearsals back in those days, and I would just...
Was I crying? Probably.
Like I would see you in that preparation, like, all right, let's go, let's do this. Like, and it's like you want to get it there in that moment, because again, you can do everything at rehearsal, but once you're in that stage or on that dance floor, if you really want me to go deep, if you're at Candela, Salsamanias, and you got that horseshoe of people watching you, and I'm going to be totally honest. From a New Yorker, many people really care. They love your performances, and I'm just saying you, but they want to see the fuck up.
Oh, of course.
They want to see somebody fall.
Why does traffic build up on the other side of the road of a car crash? We love watching tragedy. We love it. We're addicted to it.
And people like
horrible.
They don't want to say out loud, but you know, many times I've been in the audience just watching people,
and people are like,
they just have that. It's like, and it's like, do you like that I'm performing, or what are you waiting for? But that's something, of course, in New York, we've always been harsh critics, and I think that's also helped a lot of artists. It's also hindered a lot of artists, but it's also helped. Because mentally, you have to understand, there may be times in a show that things don't go your way. A trick fails.
All the time.
And you have to say, this was just that show, and let's move on. But I've also met many artists and many dancers beyond the stage after they get off and they're in the back, and you're not really alone because you're with people, but you're alone. You're like sitting and going through everything. And for me, I appreciate those that keep persevering and keep pushing. So, how long was it for you until you kind of transitioned out of Milton, and what were those next steps after?
When I think I danced with them for 7 years. I'm so bad with my timeline, my own life timeline. I need to write it down. But I moved to New York in 2013. It was because I wanted more, you know. North Carolina was great, but I wanted to make a full-time career out of dance. I had really firmly made that decision. I'd graduated school. I started a master's program in fine art. So I was full in on art. And I wanted to make dancing my career, and, New York, place to go.
Hey, you're not lying, because the same story you just said of, where you're from, it was great, but there's a transitional period when you realize, if I'm going to grow, I need to go where I'm going to get that motivation, where I'm going to see people that are maybe on a different level, and I have to match that. And I've heard that from many artists of going to New York to kind of live that dream. So
it is the dream.
When you were in New York, what were those initial experiences like for you?
Oh man, it was terrifying. I mean, first of all, I just want to say, part of, it's not to say that I was better than anybody in North Carolina, because I never believed that. I still don't believe that. And I don't think that you have to go to New York or LA or Italy or wherever to make a career out of salsa. I don't think that that's necessary. But for me, I wanted more. I wasn't getting I wasn't getting the education that I wanted. For me to continue to be a student of dance and culture and history is important to me for the rest of my life. I don't care how long I've been teaching, I will continue learning. I think that they need to go together. And so I felt that I wasn't learning as much as I could in North Carolina. I do, if I could go back and learn from someone in North Carolina, it would be Beto Herrera, because he's amazing. And, unfortunately, the climate of the community at the time didn't allow for me to train with both companies. And so I didn't learn from him, but I have learned from him now. And so, I continue learning from him because he is very, very incredibly knowledgeable. And, the North Carolina Triangle area is incredibly lucky to have him. And now there's so many more instructors in that area and in Charlotte and all over in Wilmington. So, obviously things have changed, but at that time I wanted more. And part of what I wanted was to go out on my own. I just wanted to be on my own. And I had, contacts here in New York just from traveling with Kobo. And so I contacted Fausto and I started working with him. With our goal was to compete. And so there was that. So I wanted to really give myself that energy to train with a very specific focus of competition. And I wanted to start training Afro-Cuban. And there were possibilities to do that here in New York. And that just like opened up my world. And my desire to train Afro-Cuban was just to mejorar, like to improve my salsa, because I felt that was missing. I felt that it was missing from my dancing. And so, and it was.
I mean, and I completely understand what you're saying, because I've taken a few classes, but also have talked to salseros or salseras, but dancers, especially in this Latin dance world, who has started with salsa and who have said that Afro-Cuban has improved them tremendously. And, hearing it from you, I mean, it definitely is an accurate statement for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about foundations and we're talking about our basics and our fundamentals, we can't exclude the roots of what it is that we do musically, ideologically, historically, culturally, movement-wise. That you can't take that away from it. And so that was something that I wasn't taught in North Carolina. I could have learned it. I didn't.
Gotcha.
I wasn't taught that in the way that that I'm learning it now. Continuing to learn and study and grow with that. And it's transformed my life, not just my dancing, but my being.
So a question I do have is then, like you talked about Fausto, and we're talking about Fausto Felix of La Fuerza, also one of the actors in the new movie In the Heights, especially that club scene that I've heard so much about. What were those experiences like of you kind of transitioning from the Kobo brothers, training under them, going from shows and congresses and different parties and events performing, to now stepping into the competitive world? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I got really interested in competing because actually, literally the week before I moved to New York, I auditioned for So You Think You Can Dance.
Wow. Wait, before we get to Fausto, what was that? Like, that
was crazy.
Right now.
That was crazy. Because part of it was, and it's so funny that I say this now because my dancing was like, wow, well, at that time. But I hated the way salsa was represented on So You Think You Can Dance. I thought it was so cheesy. My dancing was pretty cheesy and not so good. But, it was even more like, we say commercial, but why is that commercial when it's like not even salsa? So, I wanted to try it. I wanted to be pushed. Again, I think that my experience as an athlete and like that competitive nature is why I had that desire. Not to be like, oh, I'm number one, I'm the best. I think competition is healthy in dance, but at the end of the day, it is art and it is subjective. And how the hell can we put a first and second, third place on someone and make it paramount? Maybe I was first or second that night, right? And that's great. And we should be proud of those accomplishments, but it's art. Everyone has different tastes. Everyone has different, backgrounds in that. And so yeah, it was a really exciting goal for me to have. And what I love about competition is the focus that it gives you for your training, right? It's very clear, right? It's not just, oh, I got a show on Friday. I gotta work on my Suzy Q. It's like, we're going to war.
Yeah.
We better train, you know?
We're going to war with a bunch of people who want the same common goal, the same reward. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it really, you know, it gave me that feeling of like training for a game and a championship. It gave me that same feeling of like athleticism.
Yeah.
That I really enjoy in dance. And I still enjoy that, but now I also enjoy the artistry and the culture and the connection a little bit more than the athleticism. Whereas before I was like a little bit more like, make me do everything, throw me in the air.
Show me everything. I want to be so complete. Yes. And hey, like you said, going from North Carolina, coming to New York City, but also you. And what's different besides what's different from you or separates you from many other artists that I've talked to and had the same conversation is you had those connections coming in. And meaning connections, you've had the relationships with the people who have seen you rather than some artists that I know kind of fresh. And they're coming from square one. And, you know, it's not easy. And like you said, you training then with Fausto doing competitive work, that truly is a blessing. And I love that, you know, for me, Fausto is one of the greatest, not just dancers, not just artists, but for me, one of the greatest competitors in the dance world, because people like him, people like Darlene Garcia, and many others, especially when they're doing competitive competitions with other dancers, maybe that are not in their company, or just because they have their pro-am levels and different levels. I mean, hey, you're just dancing with someone in training, and you have to make sure that energy is high from start to finish, because you're not just doing one routine and done. Sometimes you're doing that routine probably or multiple routines over a 3-day weekend, and you're just trying to survive.
It's intense. Competing is intense. And if it's something that piques your interest, I recommend you try it. It's definitely worth the experience. I do, you know, it's a controversial topic whether or not competition should even exist in this art form, and I understand both sides of the conversation, and I think that it's important to have those conversations. You know, who are the judges? Who are the competitors? What are their relationships with the judges? All these conversations are important to have, right? How do you judge salsa? How do you judge that? How do you, you know, do we have a standard technique? What is that technique based in? Do we have, are we basing it on Afro-Cuban technique? Are we basing it on salsa on one mambo technique? Are we basing it on ballroom technique? What are we looking at? And how are we having this standard, right? So we need to keep having these conversations. This is new. Competition in salsa, performance in salsa is still a baby.
Yes, compared to things like West Coast swing, compared to the ballroom scene, we're still fairly new. I mean, I still remember, my jaw dropped when I saw their salsa competitions on ESPN. Like that right there was my first I think we made it. Yeah, absolutely. So of course, going through that competitive world, then what was that next step for you? Was it kind of going solo, or then was there a partnership after that started?
Well, I actually always danced solo. I did my first solo when I was still in North Carolina. And so that was always a goal of mine. I was always really motivated. I don't know where the hell that went. I'm like, that's on the decline. But I was always really self-motivated because I just wanted to do it all. I wanted to do everything. And so I started dancing solo when I was in North Carolina. So that was kind of always on the back burner, was like, well, I can always do a solo. But I never wanted to stop competing. I just, with Fausto, we started Team New York together, which is now New York Movement. And that had like a big explosive dramatic end that we don't need to go into, but I started a partnership after that. For a lot of reasons, you know, Fausto and I weren't getting as much work as he was with Maria at the time, you know, his bachata partner. He was blowing up for his, you know, their unique style of bachata, which is incredible. And I needed to work. I was in New York to train and work and go to congresses, and he just wasn't available anymore. So, we made the decision to kind of, go our separate ways. And I started working with Robert, and he wasn't interested in competing, so I stopped competing, basically.
Yeah, and
a lot of things were given up.
Absolutely, because people have to understand, there are artists out there, or there are performers that really motivate themselves when they're doing competitions. There's ones that can really maneuver both, but there are really a lot of dancers that prefer just congresses, socials, events compared to competitive competitions year round. So that's a definitely different world.
It's a different world, yeah.
Yeah, and also as we talked as well, you then now working with Robert. But before we get into that, I want to give a big shout out to Mr. Earl Go Rush.
Earl, I love you.
And I love Isabel. She is fire. Absolutely.
He's been in my corner since day one.
See, that's big ups especially to Mr. Earl Rush. And as well, we have here, I don't know the name yet, but we're going to figure it out. It's somebody from NC.
Oh, thank you.
We are also proud of you. We're going to figure that one out for sure. Now, as we talk about this, your partnership with Robert. Many people, especially in New York as well, absolutely loved the routines that you and Robert were able to come up with. I myself was definitely witness to a lot of rehearsals that you guys were part of, because a lot of times I would have rehearsal and then you would come and be there and then literally rehearse right after.
Yeah.
And that for me was really interesting because, seeing you working with him, it was different because him coming from Yamule, then you, of course, doing your work with Fausto, but also coming from NC was a very interesting partnership, especially the routines that were coming about, because that right there was really interesting because they were different. In my opinion, especially in New York, it's hard to separate yourselves from everyone else because everyone else is trying to get that standing up. Believe it or not, everybody wants the standing O. Everybody wants those eyes on them.
Yeah, if somebody tells you they're not interested in that and they're performing, come on.
Come on.
The ego is there, y'all. Come on. It feels good. You can want that, but also not place all of your value on that.
Yes, absolutely. And for me now, coming from you as well, and like you said, your partnership with Robert, how would you really kind of summarize that experience with that partnership?
Ooh, summarize. She's nervous. She's nervous now. It was really challenging. Looking back on it now, I'm still processing a lot. There was a lot of trauma, and there were a lot of career highs along the way. So it's like extreme highs and extreme lows. Kind of meshed in together. I truly started making a living off of dance, mostly when I was working with Robert. We had a very similar drive and like work ethic in the beginning. And so it was really nice to have someone to work with that was like, we show up, we do the work, and we leave. And it was like no bullshit. But there was a lot of bullshit. I've talked about my partnership and why it ended a lot. I have nothing to hide. He is a problematic person. He's a dangerous person. And, there was a lot of that in my partnership with me personally, not physically. My life was physically in his hands on stage and in rehearsals, but he never physically harmed me. But he has physically harmed a lot of people, and there was a lot of confusion and a lot of things to deal with mentally while I was working with him. A lot of manipulation, a lot of lying. Probably going to get a lot of shit for saying this publicly again all the time. But, y'all probably know the story at this point. It was confusing because while I was living my dream, the whole reason I moved to New York, he was hurting people. And so how do you deal with that? And so, yeah. And he was hurting me. He was stealing from me. He was lying to me, manipulating me, controlling me in a lot of different ways that took me a while to recognize, because something that I think is really common in this community is how we kind of normalize just abuse, like psychological and physical and sexual abuse in this community. I think it's just so normalized that it takes us a while to recognize when it's happening. You know, and again, it goes from directors to partners to dancers on the dance floor, people you don't even know, promoters. It's so paramount, which is why, you know, as nervous and uncomfortable as it makes me feel, I'm never going to stop talking about it because, you know, we have to. You know, I'm out of a really, really dangerous and psychologically abusive partnership, and I'm grateful to be out. The timing kind of sucked because as soon as I got out of that, then we went to shut down, and so it's like, goddamn, who am I as a dancer right now? I don't know. We're working it out, but I don't need a partner to figure out who I am as a dancer. So there we are. And I think another thing that's so paramount in this community is patriarchy. And machismo, you know, how common it is to have controlling male partners and directors and promoters. You know, again, I'm not calling out anyone specific other than Robert, I guess. Again, I'm gonna get some hate, but we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it because it's so normal that now people are scared to talk about it because you're like, okay, well, I saw this happen to this person and I'm pretty sure this is happening to this person, but they're not saying anything. So then I shouldn't say anything when it's happening to me. And yeah, we have to, you know. I know that my partnership with him enabled him to be able to cause people harm because we were providing each other with financial stability. You know, he needed me as much as I needed him at that time, which is why it was so hard for me to leave that partnership because I had to pay rent and that was how I was making my money. And so, you know, part of what helped me get out of that partnership, you know, is the fact that I got another job. I got a job on a dance theater show, and it was like a waterfall from there where it was like, oh shit, I can get out. And it's like, the thing is where it's like, when you're in it, when you're in that, and I'm saying this because maybe you're in a partnership, male or female or non-binary, and you're in a partnership and your partner makes you unsafe in any way, you know, physically or psychologically, and you don't know how to get out, you will find the way. You will find the way, but when you're in it and you don't see that exit, you will find every reason to make it seem okay for you to still be there. And that's okay. And that's okay. There is no, you know, there shouldn't be judgment for how long people stay in abusive relationships, because that's part of the abuse, is that there's control and there is a lack of safety outside of that relationship or partnership as well. And if you need an ear to listen to, I'm here, because I get it. And it's been really confusing and hard for me. There's been a lot of processing happening this year without the dancing. You know, I'm grateful for that, as like uncomfortable and hard as it has been. There's been a lot of processing for me. And a lot of what's happening is that my eyes are open to how much we condition ourselves and each other in this community to take a lot more bullshit than we should, and to normalize a lot of shit that we shouldn't. So I'm sorry, I'm cursing like a crazy person.
No, this is a safe space, and this ain't PG-13. This is straight up. And I'm sorry to even interject. And
go for
me, what I truly appreciate is your honesty. because for me, I was also a part of Robert's team for at one point, actually for like about a year, almost two. And for me, I'm going to be honest with many people. For me, I was those dancers that I've been dancing a long time. So when I'm on a team, and this is just me, I'm not here to be family all the time with people. I'm going in and I leave. I go into my rehearsal and I leave. I may have one or two team building experiences, but I've been a part of enough teams that, hey, this is business. We do our job, we get it done. If I make a friend here or there, if I build a relationship with somebody, great. And one thing too is I understand what you're saying about the topic of the manipulation and control, because besides your situation, I've seen publicly of artists backstages and how they talk to their partner.
Oh yeah.
And for lack of a better word, it pisses me off. Most of the time,
it's abuse. It's verbal abuse
and
psychological abuse. Yeah,
absolutely. And I've also noticed is that for me, I've had to distance myself from many of the people I considered friends, because I'm understanding, and like you said, it's a different world when you're dancing with someone that you have this tumultuous relationship with, but you are dependent on each other to succeed monetarily, because you understand it's not easy being in that type of relationship, but getting booked show after show after show after show. And that's what people want. It's kind of giving the people what they want. But at the same accord, what I appreciate besides the honesty is really the humility, but also the strength for you to say, I need to move on. Because there's been so many dancers that I have seen or heard stories of similar situations that this person completely just falls from the face of the earth and nothing to do with this art form again. And that completely keeps us from having growth, because what happens is, and I appreciate, is that you are telling your story. And for me, like we talked as well, is that for me having this platform, it's important that artists like you know that you have a safe space. This isn't caso cerrado. This isn't bochinche time. This is you being honest from your standpoint. And I appreciate it because there've been so many, not just women, but also men, not just leads, but also follows that have been through the same situations, but have never spoken about it. And for me, also being a part of that team at one point, and it discouraged me hearing about it afterwards, because I always said when I would hear about these things, why didn't I just stay in that rehearsal a little bit longer to see that unfortunate circumstance so I could react? And that was for me, when you talked about that, it upset me because I was always the first one in and the first one to leave, because I didn't want to worry about anything else. But I also said, man, what about if I did just stay that extra 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Maybe I could have prevented something, but having you speak about this, it means so much, because I hope you realize how many people really are inspired. And for me, the people who would backlash this is only because either they've never been through this or they're trying to protect something they don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, I get backlash almost every single time I talk about it, but at this point, it's like, it's out there. It's out there. It's public record. You can look it up. And if we don't get comfortable talking about this, again, you know, I'm going to take my this place of privilege that I have as a white woman. I don't even want to say prominent member of the community, but like, you know, some people know who I am. And so why would I not use my voice to talk about the things that I care about, the things that I've lived, you know, and to try and right some of the wrongs, you know. I know that my partnership with him caused people harm.
Yeah.
I know that. It's fact. It's fact. I used to say the same thing. Oh, but I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've never seen it with my own eyes. And, you know, I know now that, like, I was in it. I was in it way too deep with him. You know, again, he never laid a hand on me. I'm not going to lie to you. He never laid a hand on me. He got in my face a couple of times, but, you know, he wasn't stupid. I'm his money bag. You know, he's not going to hurt me. He's not going to touch me. But, the lies, the manipulation. You know, he started partnerships behind my back. He started teams behind my back, professional teams behind my back. Again, this is all water under the bridge now, because I don't care what he does with his time, but I care that he's hurt people. And I know that my our success together enabled him to encounter people who he has harmed. And so it gave him money, it gave him power, it gave him presence, it gave him fame, while doing that for me as well. Yeah. So, you know, my rise as a dancer is his rise as a dancer as well. Yeah. You know, he might tell you, he taught me everything I learned. But
I can honestly say that's a big fat one. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, and mind you, as we talk here, for me, but again, us having this conversation, as I've talked to you privately, I had to talk to you about this before we even brought this up, because my intention was never to have this be the topic of the subject, but at the same accord, I understood there was a history in terms of success. There was a story. So there's no, you can't really erase it. It's just more of me having that conversation to say how you want to gauge the situation that's on you. Because me, dancing on his team was one of the greatest times I ever had, because of honestly, not him, it was the people in the group. And one thing you said earlier that now correlates with this, and now after this, we'll get really into kind of the future of things, because there's always a moving transitional period, was something you said earlier about the drill sergeant aspect.
Yep.
And I'm going back to, and people have to understand, some of the best companies, whether it's New York, wherever you are, some of the most legendary, most well-rounded, noted companies had directors that were extremely strict and drill sergeant like. I've been a part of them. I've seen when a teacher gets in your face and you have to realize, do I keep going with the program, or do I just say fuck it and I'm not going to take this? And that, and I say that in the most blunt, honest way, because it is not easy. People don't understand. It's not just a 2-hour rehearsal when you go. When you get to a point that you are well noted and people want you and traveling, this is where the clashing comes, because you have one person that's on this type of energy and the other person is this way. In my total honest opinion, with me, I was always the person, and people can tell you whatever company I was a part of. And I told people this backstage, oh, we a team, but I'm making sure y'all keep up that energy with me. And mind you, I was just a student, but I was the one telling people, no, we got to work. I don't care if it's a 10-person show, if only 10 people's here, we need to work. And that's the work ethic, but also it's how you internalize the instruction. That's the biggest thing. And I don't know if that's tea or water, but you're sipping and I like it.
It's water.
What I'm saying is, like you said that earlier, and it just resonated, because either being part of companies or knowing people that have been part of companies, whoever it is, that they've been through that situation when an instructor can take it to a level that can almost be irresponsible, aggressive, and how you interpret it and internalize it is going to put you on a different path.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to everything that we've been saying, where it's like we have normalized abuse in this community. A wide variety of abuse. We've normalized a whole bunch of isms in this community, right? Biases. We've normalized so much, and as much as I love and this community is home, I can love this community and want to make it better, right?
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think that we get confused when a lot of people get confused when there are critiques of things that are good. But don't you want it to be better? Like, you know, the uprisings last summer, like we started having a lot of uncomfortable conversations about race in this community, and a lot of people just didn't want to hear it.
Yes. And that was revealing, because it was also the same people within your community, because the same issues, people have to understand, the same sexism, racism, and the list goes on. the dance world isn't oblivious to it. It goes right. These same people who have these ideologies are the same ones that you just enjoy to dance from.
The reality is that we live in a white supremacist world,
Mm-hmm.
and patriarchy is born of white supremacy, and every sub community is going to have these same problems that we have in society as whole,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, this is a beautiful community. Everyone is welcome. But guess what? Why don't we listen to the people that say they don't feel they're welcome?
Thank you, because that's the biggest thing is people just want everything to be not even PC, but everything should be great. Everything's awesome, but
Yeah.
no, it's not. I mean, they're the same issues that we were talking about maybe 2018, 2015 were still happening in 2021. The only difference in 2020 was it was more publicized. And the fact is, I think the greatest thing that happened over these past few years is now the people who really don't care about us, they're actually posting on Facebook. So it makes it much easier to really separate those because, you've had a lot of time to just post away, but you don't realize who's watching. You don't realize who's listening.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, me having these conversations with artists like you, understanding your journey, understanding your experience is so valuable because there is someone right now who has gone through, is going through, or might go through the same situation. And you giving them this experience and this story is giving them a lesson, is helping them, is guiding them. Because again, like I've talked about this subject, and I'm going to be totally honest, like you feel you might have backlash. I'm going to be completely honest. The legends, the leaders in the community, and not all of them, some of them that I know personally did absolutely nothing when things happened. And I knew it and I would bring it to their attention. But because I'm younger than you means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people this, and all of the issues that we've seen over the past years, especially things that have been publicized, whether it's racism, sexism, bias, and everything else included. When it comes to the dance world, let's just dance. That's the biggest thing.
We prioritize fame and we prioritize popularity, right? Because, you said it yourself. It felt really good being on Robert's team.
Yeah.
It felt really good closing shows.
It was great. It was just for me, I knew being involved in any type of group, there's always going to be some bullshit and some. And my thing was, all I told myself is any group I'm a part of, I'm going to take and soak up and take advantage of as much things as I can. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, no matter what anybody says, no matter what group you're a part of, at the end of the day, you have control of what you want to do. No matter, like you said, we remember the times when you couldn't join two dance companies, when you were kind of contracted through a contract or through a handshake, that you were going to be loyal to them. But
or I think through
but realizing too is that I love seeing that artists now are taking control of their careers, and people like you have taken control of your destiny. So now kind of really moving on and transitioning from this period. And like you said, there was that point that you left and then COVID hit. Initially after transitioning from that partnership then COVID hitting, what was those moments like for you? Because I know, like you said, you were, moving along and you wanted to do something else, but kind of this pandemic happened, and it still kind of is, but what were those moments like for you? Like, what was those thought processes?
Well, I was really fortunate to have gotten a role in a new like off-Broadway show that was focused on salsa, and I had been playing the lead role for a few months, and we had just signed contracts for a 6-month run of the show. Oh, and it was going to be the most financial security I'd ever gotten in my life, in my dance career. It was something I was really passionate about because I was getting into theater, and I felt like I had found a new direction for my career that was like just aligned with me in so many ways. And, I had financial freedom from Robert, which was, that's, ultimately what gave me the courage to leave the partnership. But I'd like to say that my humanity, was the real reason that I ended that partnership, because it's, there's only so much that you can take and be a part of when people are causing harm. And so, do I wish I left earlier? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the bandwidth to do that, though. I wasn't ready. And so, I was feeling great, terrified. Yeah. It was still scary because, and I still feel a lot of fear right now. Like, what is my place in this dance community, in the salsa community, Latin dance community? Where will I go from here mm-hmm. in terms of the salsa community? I have no idea. Yeah. I know I've always been vocal, but even more so this past year, just because, I got out of something really, really horrible. And as scary and vulnerable as that was, it gave me my voice back and my autonomy back. And so, I'm not going to stop speaking on the things that matter to me, which is humanity at the end of the day, humanity and making this community and this world a better place with my Suzy Q's, but not worrying about my Suzy Q's at the expense of other humans. So, things are looking up, hopefully. So I'm going to keep critiquing this community, myself, my peers, when I feel that I can, because I believe in this community. Mm-hmm. I believe in making it better. You mentioned, other people that may have had similar situations to me not coming back. And I think that we need to be careful to not vilify those people, because it's not their fault. Absolutely. And I can understand that desire to not come back. I've thought about it every day over the past year. Because, as much as we want to create a safe space, and I appreciate you using those words and continuing to encourage that, it's honestly not up to us whether someone feels safe or not. And the reality, again, even with all of the intersections of my privilege and power in this community and in this world, I don't feel safe in this community. I just don't, because of all of my experiences. I have never been safe in this community. And so then I imagine someone that doesn't have the same intersections of privilege as me, and I can understand why people leave. And so that truth, that reality, my reality, and that reality that people leave, I just think about, when we continue encouraging, promoting, paying, supporting, hiring, and enabling people that do harm because they're so talented. Mm-hmm. Think of all the people who leave because of that. And we don't know how talented these people are. So if we keep causing harm or looking the other way when people are causing harm, but they continue to be spotlighted and encouraged and supported and paid, again, money is power. Money speaks. Who we support speaks. And the harm doesn't, there's a spectrum of harm. Yeah. That we don't even know about. But again, it goes down to listening to people's experience, because everyone is the authority on their own experience. And if we just listen to people and believe them the first time, then we can make a big difference, right? It doesn't have to be a safe space, but it can be a safe conversation. And literally all it takes is just believing someone. So if we can start shifting the way that we place power into people's hands, and by power, fame is power, money is power, closing a show is power, putting on an event is power, hosting a podcast is power, speaking on a podcast is power. These are all different ways. You're giving me an opportunity to share my ideas and my voice, and so what am I using that for? And making sure that we always have that at the top of our minds, so that we can continue critiquing our community to make it better, right? We can't just say, no, everyone's welcome here, and then everyone is welcome here. It's just not the way it works. We can believe that, but we should believe that and act on it. And I think I strayed off of the topic, but
No,
these
honestly,
are the things that I care about,
it
because
was
I think
beautifully said. Beautifully said.
I think that a lot of people have exited this community and want to exit this community because they're fed up.
Yes.
And I hear you.
Mhm.
I am you. Not exactly. We all have different stories. We all have different experiences. I understand why you want to leave. And because of that, I know I can't leave. And so even if, and I know, again, representation matters. I know that my voice isn't going to reach everyone, but if it reaches one or two people, that's enough for me, because the dancing and the art form is here for you. It loves you. If you love it, it loves you. And it's not the dancing that fucks you up, it's people. So we got.
I completely understand. And honestly, really everything I can say to that before we now transition to our last segment is thank you. And for me, everything you said is a true example of a leader. Because again, before you could be a leader, you had to be a follower. You had to go through the experiences you went through in order to help build yourself to where you are now. And like you said, everything you said, remember, no one can go through your experience but you. No one has the right to shame you or have backlash over you because of an experience they did not have. Because again, what we can do is learn through these conversations. Because like I always say, starting the conversation makes a change, because the same conversations we have are the same comments and private messages we may get from people in the future saying thank you. Because again, people are having the conversations. We can no longer say nobody's talking about it. No, there are people talking about it. The only question is, are you listening?
Yeah, you're either listening or you're ignoring.
Absolutely. And, for me, again, like I said, thank you, because, for me, I appreciate you not just as the artist, not just as Isabel Freiberger, the dancer, as the owner of Issa Dance Company, which was one of my favorite companies.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Thank you. Thank you. I love hearing that. But just, again, Isabel as the person. And that's what I really appreciate. And I thank you for everything you've contributed to this community and more, but also looking forward to what you're doing in the future. And now it brings us to my last segment called the randoms, which is about 10 questions. All right. So my first question to you is, we're going to keep it light. Your favorite color?
Green.
Oh, is it because of money?
No.
Okay.
Trees. I love trees.
Okay. I mean, hey, North Carolina got nature out the woodworks. I mean, trees everywhere.
That's what I miss the most.
Next question is, if you could have one meal on this earth, what would it be?
Like one meal right now, or one meal for the rest of time?
One meal. If you had only one meal you could have for the rest of your life, what is it?
Oh, anything with rice. Really? I love rice. My boyfriend just made rice and chicken, and I'm just waiting to eat it right now.
Like a true, Spaniard, it's true Latina. Absolutely.
Yeah,
nobody doesn't love rice. So next question is, if you had one performance, you're at a show right now, the closing show, who is it?
To watch?
Yes.
Oh man. Oh my God, there's really so many people I love watching. Tanya Canarsa is one of my favorite dancers, so I'll just say her. She's oof.
Big shout out to Tanya. I mean, now she's also at
I know, I'm about to jump into one of those classes. I just got back and I'm trying to get my life together, but I'll be in class soon. Trust me.
Absolutely. Empire Mambo NYC with Adolfo, Tanya, the whole Amneris. I mean, the list goes on. Angel, Stephanie, Charlie, just crazy. All right. Next one is, if you could be at one event right now, what would that be?
Ooh, any weekender. I love the small events.
Ooh, that's
sorry, promoters. I love congresses as well, but I just find that there's more connection at the smaller events, and I feel like I can make a bit of a bigger impact with my classes at smaller events, and you get to know people more.
Yeah.
So one event that is like really beautiful in North Carolina is called Port City Salsa Splash. Uh, yeah, it's a really great event, and it's just one of my favorites. You know, they're doing a lot of smaller Cat and Summer. They're doing a lot of smaller events this summer instead of like a bigger event. But you know, it's female run, and it's just a really beautiful event.
I love it. All right. Next question is, if you could have one collaboration with an artist, who is it?
Ooh, Mitchell in Europe. Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. I don't know. There's a lot of people I'd like to collaborate with, some women too, you know. Tanya.
I mean,
let me just stop fangirling. But I don't know. So many people. Collaboration is beautiful. They, you know, a lot of times they come up when they're least expected, and yeah, I don't know. I wasn't ready for this.
You never know. We might see something. So
I'm like traumatized with collaborations right now, but give me a minute and I'll be fine.
Absolutely. All right. Next question is, what is one of the most embarrassing moments, not just you, but that you've probably seen on a stage? You don't have to give names, but something you've seen on a stage at a Congress festival, whatever. They were like, whoa.
Me for sure. I fell on my ass completely. Robert and I, we fell, but we fell.
Hell.
We fell. Yeah, but honestly, I'm so grateful for that moment, because I truly believe that failures are actually more important than successes, and you can't hold on to either of them. Yes. Because they don't define you. And that was actually on a really telling moment in our partnership, and I learned a lot, not just about, you know, training and you know, messing up, but about character. And yeah, it was really embarrassing. But at the end of the day, like, you have to train knowing you're going to mess up.
Yes.
And it's beautiful because you're freaking human.
Thank you.
It's human. Like, you know, we didn't get hurt, thank God. But
I know, because don't get me wrong, I loved your performances, but I was so scared almost every routine because I knew the trick would just get more and more complex, and I'm like, please God, please God.
Yeah, it was one of those tricks where you know, I was terrified every single time doing those tricks, which now looking back, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have been doing tricks so hard, because I was like shitting my pants every single time before going on stage. But yeah, it was during a really crazy trick, and we just went to the ground.
Hey, I mean, hey, you got to learn from your experiences. All right, next question is, if Isabel can have a store right now, what is the name of that store?
Probably Issa, because that's what I name everything, just because I'm like really not creative with names. But yeah, I do have a store.
Okay.
I sell jewelry. I sell art prints. I'm about to open it back up. I'm a photographer. I hope to sell my photography one day. So I don't know what it would be called, but there's stuff to sell. So
I'll tell you this: when that comes about, please message me, because I would love to buy one, especially an art piece, pictures. Trust me, I'm definitely one of the first customers. I can't wait to see that. My next question to you is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
To fly. I'm terrified of heights, but I want to fly.
Okay, I like that. A lot of people have told me the same thing.
Or to be invisible, because my introversion would love that.
Oh my God. All right. This next question should be really interesting. You having experience living in North Carolina and New York City, what is the biggest difference between North Carolina and New York?
Fresh air.
Oh my God.
No, it just the sensory overload of New York. It's just boom, boom, boom.
Everything, yeah.
Boom, everything. People, experiences, languages, foods, flavors, sounds, smells, noises, which is part of why I love it, but it's also part of why I hate it. Because I'm like, stop.
Yeah, because it's like
in North Carolina,
everywhere sometimes. It's like going out. I just came back from upstate New York, and it's just trees everywhere. And it's like, wow, there's actually peace and quiet.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so it's like, while in New York, I feel connected to like the adrenaline and the motivation of like fighting for your dreams in this city. It's something that is like, you can't compare it to anywhere else in the world. And it's like so unique, this pulse, this energy pulse that lives in the city. But then when I'm in nature, which I can easily find in North Carolina, it's this like sense of connection to something bigger than myself that I just, you know, both experiences make you feel kind of connected to something bigger than yourself in two completely different ways. So, yeah.
Wow. I love that. I love that. And my next question, my second before last question is, name the event, or what is your most memorable performance, where it was?
Probably the one where I fell on my butt. It was in DR.
Wait,
huh? The what?
Was it Chatu?
No, it was before Punta Cana at the Hard Rock Cafe. Yeah, in Santo Domingo.
I mean, hey, as long as you had, and it's interesting that you say it's memorable, because again, I understand where you're going with that, because again, you learn so much from adversity. It's easy to win all the time, but it's, you know, it's, you really see the true character of someone when they're not in that winning position.
Yeah. But if I were like, if I could give two answers to that, I'm a chatty Cathy, is the like really the most recently memorable and like impactful performances of my life was this show that I was telling you, this off-Broadway show. It's called Carmen.
Elvis was in that. Elvis Collado was. Yes, I remember seeing that.
A lot of people in the community were in that. And originally I was you know, in the dance ensemble, but I was understudying the lead role. And the lead female, Carmen, her name is Maria Liz Molina. She's incredible. She got injured on the second to last show of her run. And we had one show left, and I had only learned half the show in that role. And the next day I had to learn the whole rest of the show and perform it in one day. So that was probably pretty memorable. It was like probably 55 panic attacks. I cried. And then it was like the most amazing experience. I don't remember any of it while it happened. It was like I blacked out, I did it, and then it was done. And I was like, oh shit.
It
was amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, that right there, I understand those moments of like, you're in that kind of euphoric moment of something you wanted to do for so long. You're in it, and it just like, it goes from start to finish, and like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah, it's a 2.5-hour show, and it felt like it happened in 30 seconds.
Man, I really do hope somehow in the future Carmen can come back. I
have a feeling it probably is. I think we were really getting a lot of momentum, and so it's going to take a minute, but it's got to come back. It was a beautiful show.
Absolutely. And my last question, and this one I love asking because it gets people really introspective, is how do you want to be remembered?
I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who was passionate about the way that I do things and the impact I have on this world. You know, it's not just about my own selfish dreams, but the impact that my dreams have on other people and myself and my community and my family. I guess community. I'd like to be remembered for how I've affected and impacted a community that is important to me.
Absolutely. And I love asking that question because it really helps the artist, the guest, really dig deep and understand, because so many people, they love this art form, they love what they do, but you know, when it comes to ask that question, it kind of takes people aback. But I love your answer. And again, thank you again for doing this segment. And now it helps us into our conclusion of our talk today. And honestly, Isabel, from start to finish, I've enjoyed every moment. Appreciating your humility, your vulnerability, because again, like you said, we're just human beings. We're just people. Even though you love seeing us perform, at the end of the day, we still take off our makeup, our costumes, and we're just a normal human being. And for me, that's why I love having people on that I admire, that I've even maybe performed with or know of, because again, I want years from now, people can look back at this and listen to your story and say, wow, I heard it straight from her mouth of her experience, rather than someone else just writing an article about a video they saw and said how much they loved you. So, you know, for me, I've appreciated every moment. But before we go, I would love to know if you had any last few words for myself and the audience.
Yeah, I mean, for you, thank you so much for having me. I feel super honored every time I get, you know, that people even care to hear me speak. I clearly have a lot to say. I'm passionate. I love this art form and this music, and I feel, you know, so honored to be a guest in this art form, because at the end of the day, it isn't mine. But it has embraced me and welcomed me in a way that has changed my life. Dance has made me a better person, and just your art matters, your dancing matters, your story matters, your voice matters. So just tell it, you know, and don't forget about your impact, good and bad, right?
Absolutely. I mean, because again, that really helps with the pages within your story. I mean, hey, you're gonna have to go through some hurdles in order to get to the finish line. So just hearing about your experience thus far, really kind of a glimpse, because there's so many layers. I appreciate it, because again, with this platform, it is for artists like yourselves to have that quote unquote safe space to be completely open and honest without fear of bias or judgment. You know, and again, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everyone that's been able to tune in, everyone that will be tuning in the future. And I definitely hope we can have you on in the future when things are a lot more normal. We'll definitely catch up with you and see how you're doing. We do love your online classes you've been able to provide. And I know in the future, I definitely hope you have those in-person classes and we check back up on you. And again, Isabel, I really appreciated just having you on, having this discussion. I love the conversation. It flowed seamlessly. And you know, I definitely can't wait for the next one. So thank you all for tuning in to the Live Discussions with Diamond podcast, episode 130 with Miss Isabel Freiberger. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good night and stay